have a special little introductory surprise here. We didn't know this charming lady spoke up, introduced herself, and well, you come on up here. First of all, may we have your name?
I'm Irene Keller.
Irene, very good. And you introduced yourself and you talked about your husband. Will you just repeat what you told us?
Yes, I'm really very happy to tell this story. It's really a spiritual journey in my mind. It was such a special time. And it began, I did some home care nursing, and so I've always been interested in medicine. And just by coincidence, I was given this old book.
Okay. All right, that old book, this is the now new book. It's essentially the same book, very little changed.
It was 1958 copyright and $7.95 inside, it says. And I thumbed through it and I found it of some interest, but I didn't know that it was going to mean so much. Just a little while down the road, my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, metastasized into the lymph system, and he was in pretty desperate straits.
How long ago was this?
This was 10 years ago.
10 years.
We knew that Dr. Gerson had died. We had heard something about you maybe living in Imperial Beach, maybe doing something, but we were such novices we had no way of even exploring that. So we knew that conventional treatment just wasn't the thing to do. I don't know how we knew, but I do believe there's some inner voice within each of us that tells us what's right for us, and that nobody should take our power from us. We should feel good about what we do to take care of ourselves.
You see, had you looked at the book, it said the name and address, and we had a P.O. box there. We would have picked up the mail had you written us.
We just thought it was too old.
Okay.
But for us, my husband had to stop working, and we had no finances to speak of. I was working, otherwise we wouldn't have had anything. So he went to the Cancer Society for support. The only way that he could get support from the Cancer Society was to sign a form surrendering all right to determine his own method of treatment. So since he wouldn't do that, and the only would be the prescribed treatment that was accepted by the medical community, we were out in left field. But for some reason, we felt really good. I particularly felt good. It wasn't me, so I wasn't as scared as he was. And I just had this sense of what was right, and so we started going through this book, and we went and investigated other therapies in the bookstores, the health stores, and we really used this as a Bible. We had no funds for a juicer, so we bought our juices at the health food store. And here's this man, I mean, he was in desperate straits. He was supposed to die. He found one oncologist who would check him, who would maintain him as a patient, and it was hard to find one who would. He was very angry at what was being done, but he would measure the tumor, which I don't remember, I think it was 5 centimeters, and every week or two it would get measured again, and it started shrinking. It made the oncologist so angry he could hardly speak. And my husband said, well, doesn't this prove that what I'm doing is right? He says, it doesn't prove anything. There have been no tests to measure this. It's just happening, that's all. Well, it kept happening. And now today, my husband has selected various doctors who know nothing of his medical history. They give him MRI tests. They do all of the extensive tests. There is a slight scarring on his pancreas, otherwise, which they can't determine the cause of. Other than that, there is absolutely no evidence of that cancer ever having been in his system.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for keeping up the work.
Okay.
And thank you, dear.
This is now 10 years. 10 years since your husband was diagnosed. Was he biopsied?
Oh, yes.
He was. So where's proof?
Oh, absolutely.
Would you be good enough and send us a copy of the biopsy report and a little bit of the history?
I'll see what I can do about that.
I'd really appreciate that.
The one thing I will say, he has had a cancer in the thyroid, which we felt a little comfortable about having radiated, but I realize now that if we had maintained the proper therapy from that time on, instead of just saying, hooray, we're healed, forget it, go down and have a hamburger. Well, we never did go back to red meat.
Good.
But we did, you know, not do the juices except periodically if there was a flare-up of some sort.
Okay.
So it's even though we were primitive, it's the theory that it does work. This is the right road.
Yes, I know. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back. Thank you very much. All right. Now, this kind of testimony is better than any number of cases I can tell you about of patients who recovered with pancreatic cancer. We have one lady in Nanaimo, British Columbia in Victoria, who had pancreas cancer, metastases to the liver, metastases to the bile ducts, metastases to the spleen, about the same story. And she did the Gerson therapy over 5.5 years ago, and she remains not only alive but very well and active and busy and looking wonderful, functioning perfectly. Okay, so, but this kind of personal testimony is better for you than all the cases I can describe for you. All right, now we will start on the workshop. These are all kinds of details and information that you need in order to really do the Gerson therapy. I do have a little sheet like that. It's also posted over there of the subjects I'm going to be covering during the workshop. The top one is water. And of course, it's interesting that first of all, when you open the book on the actual doing of the therapy, which is page 237, and you have a list on page 238 right away of the forbidden foods. I should say forbidden items because some of the things on that list are not foods. But among other things, on the very bottom, it says drinking water. Now, many of you people have been told that you should drink at least 8 glasses of water a day and so on and so forth. This doesn't just say drinking water, it says drinking water, which is a slight difference. What Dr. Gerson meant was that it is unwise to drink water when you're drinking 13 glasses of juice. First of all, you don't need a lot of extra fluids. But water tends to dissolve the stomach liquids, the stomach acids, and the stomach juices. And the water will cause you gas and digestive problems when given together with the food and the Gerson juices. So you are not to drink water. Now, some patients still in the middle of the night wake up and are thirsty. And if they're not going to drink water, what are you going to do? Well, Dr. Gerson had an answer for that. For these people, we have peppermint tea in a thermos by their bedside on the night table. Because water will dilute the stomach, cause gas, cause upsets. Peppermint tea gently stimulates stomach juices to flow, improves digestion, and causes no problems. So that's the answer to that problem. If ever during the day, besides the 13 glasses of juice and the couple of cups of soup that they get, if they are still thirsty, the patients get peppermint tea. There are other teas also that you're welcome to drink, particularly valuable if you can take any liquids aside from the juices. Very, very valuable is the Tahibo tea, which is also known as Podarco, which is also known as Lapacho. They're all the same thing. They just have a bunch of different names. Now, when you're not supposed to have drinking water, well, obviously the soup, the tea, the enemas have to be made with water. Now comes the big problem. The water you use got to be clean. And I don't mean coming out of American taps, maybe being perhaps cleaner than Mexican. That's not what I'm talking about. Clean of additives that includes chlorine, and especially fluorine. Fluorine are extremely dangerous ions. The fluorides are very small and extremely active, And the fluorine, along with the chlorine, fall into the class of chemicals called halogens. And the halogens have another two minerals. One is the bromine, and on the bottom, the very bottom, it's not a mineral, is iodine. Now, the iodine is an extremely important part of our body function. Iodine is necessary for the thyroid gland in order to produce thyroxine, the product of the thyroid gland. But if there is not adequate iodine in our foods, and if we take in fluorine and chlorine that are more active and more powerful than iodine, and they can displace the iodine from the thyroid gland, then the thyroid suffers and becomes less effective. Now, among other things, a whole bunch of things happen. Dr. Broder Barnes was a great student of the thyroid gland. He spent his life studying the thyroid. And he showed in several books he wrote that loss of thyroid or decreased thyroid function can cause a bunch of problems. Decreased immune response. So most of you people who have loss of proper immune function have a thyroid problem. It also causes, and we have a little booklet there by a Dr. Price, who shows that with lower thyroid function, you don't burn your cholesterol, and having heart disease and heart attacks and depositing cholesterol in your arteries is partly a problem of the thyroid not burning it properly. So a lower thyroid function is implicated in heart disease and strokes and atherosclerosis. But because it also lowers the thyroid function and the immune system, it's implicated in cancer, because cancer precludes a poorly functioning immune system. So the water containing either fluorine or chlorine is not acceptable. In order to cleanse the water, there are several possibilities. One way, if your water, as it is right here in Orange County, I think, and Los Angeles and San Diego, water is not fluoridated. It does have fairly high amounts of sodium, and of course it has chlorine. That is removable by reverse osmosis. But if the water is fluoridated, reverse osmosis is not adequate. It does not remove all the fluorine. And removing most of it is not satisfactory. You've got to get rid of the chlorine and all the fluorides, the sodium fluoride. Therefore, if the water supply from the tap, the city supply, whatever it is fluoridated, you've got to use distillers to clean the water, to cleanse the water. Okay, you cannot use water, including for enemas. On the contrary, the colon is highly absorptive. If you put poisons in the colon, including chlorine and fluorine, as well as coffee that's not organic, then that is quickly absorbed into the system. So you want to be sure that everything that goes into the body of the patient, particularly the cancer patient, but other patients too, has to be clean, including, of course, the water, even though you're not going to drink water. You're going to drink, if anything, the soup, you're going to drink, perhaps tea, and, of course, you're going to use a little bit of water for cooking and a good deal of water for your enemas. It's got to be clean. Okay? That also, by extension, means that you can't swim in chlorinated swimming pools. If that's all you have in the neighborhood, don't go swimming. And it also means you can't swim in the ocean, because the ocean has too much sodium. You absorb some of the salt, so you can't, during the time on the therapy, during the time you're healing, you can't swim in the ocean. If you do have a swimming pool, you can probably treat it with ozone, you can treat it with ultraviolet, you can treat it various ways, but if it's chlorinated, or if you have a jacuzzi or something like that, chlorinated, don't use it if you are a patient and if you want to get well. Okay, any questions on water? I'm going to, each time as I go through a subject, I'm going to give you the chance to ask questions.
Where do you get organic coffee?
Where do you get organic coffee? All right, I have various items here, including a sheet that says juicer information. On the bottom, it has the list of where you buy organic coffee. In a special place, cheaper than you buy it in health food stores. You're welcome to get that when we're finished with the lecture.
Is the basal temperature test, under the arm,
the basal temperature test is better, is more indicative, and more nearly accurate to give you the idea of how well your thyroid is working than any other test. Okay? But we've also seen that we can't rely on it 100%. It's as good as there is.
What is the temperature gauge?
Temperature gauge, basal temperature underarm should be 98 plus or minus 2/10.
Okay, I've also heard that with the basal temperature, some people are 1 full point low. Is that true?
I've seen more than 2 points lower. Very dangerous. It means very low body temperature. It means very poor thyroid function, poor immune system. It means allergies all the way to cancer. Yes. Okay? Next subject. Oh, sorry, okay?
Oh, I like to take baths when you say forbidden foods, Epsom salt.
I'm sorry, would you speak up? I can't hear you.
I like to take baths, but here you say not to go in the ocean or use salt. So what should I use?
Well, what do we use for baths or so on when we also in the ocean? I would like to suggest that since all water is chlorinated, there is such a thing as a dechlorination unit that you can attach to the shower. So use that kind of dechlorination unit. I know NSA makes it. There may be others that make it. And get it as low chlorine as possible and take short showers. And don't soak in bathtubs that are chlorinated or fluoridated, okay? Don't soak in the water. Don't take it in. All right? All right. Now we go to the next subject, and that's oil. I already touched on that earlier in my discussion this morning. You will find through that whole chapter where Dr. Gerson gives the directions for the therapy, very clearly and in large letters, it says no fats, no oils. And let me explain. Dr. Gerson found early in his treatment of cancer that cancer was different than other chronic diseases. He was able to treat TB and multiple sclerosis and heart disease and many, many other things and give these patients a little bit of yolk of egg and a little bit of salt-free butter. But with a cancer patient, he couldn't do that. That would clearly bring the tumor tissue growing back. And he found out very early, which helped him then to make it possible to treat cancer successfully, that a cancer patient cannot deal with any fats, none that he could find. No fats, no oils. He could not use any, including butter or eggs. He could not include even safflower, sunflower oil. He could not use olive oil. He tried all of them. And he tried and tried because he was very much aware that patients require a little bit of essential fatty acids, and he couldn't find any that, on the one hand, provided the essential fatty acids, but on the other hand, didn't make the tumors grow. So he clearly stated all through, no fats, no oils. It was not until after the book was published, in 1959, a short time before he died, that he finally learned about and ran across the work of Dr. Johanna Budwig of Germany. And she had found flaxseed oil or linseed oil, which is essentially the same. Flaxseed and linseed is the same thing. The only thing was that a number of years back you could buy linseed oil, but it wasn't the right stuff. They had taken the essential fatty acid fractions out of it and they'd refined it, and it wasn't any good. It wasn't until only about 5 years ago, 4 and some years ago, that the true flaxseed oil came on the market as opposed to linseed oil. The same material, just was given the other name to distinguish it from the other oil. This was now made from organic flaxseed. It was cold, cool extracted, cooled especially so because during pressure it would go up in temperature. Cooled conditions. Nothing was refined out, so the essential fatty fractions remained in the oil. And this oil now is sealed without air, with an inert gas to make sure that the oxygen in the air doesn't oxidize it. It is bottled in a black plastic to make sure that light doesn't oxidize it and make it deteriorate and go rancid, so that this is now a perfect oil. We have used it since it came out with excellent results. And that is what Dr. Gerson searched for. He found it only in 1959 after he had completed this book. And he started to give it to his patients. And we have a delightful letter that he wrote to Albert Schweitzer, telling Albert about the new results he was getting when he finally found the right kind of oil to give that on the one hand helps carry oxygen through the body, which is important. It kills tumor tissue. It helps carry vitamin A, beta-carotene to the tumor tissue and helps kill the tumor tissue. The flaxseed oil, as it turns out now, is extremely important, but we didn't really have the right material until about 4.5 years ago, when it was supplied by Omega and 1 or 2 other outfits. That is now available to us and available to our patients. So this particular flaxseed oil comes in a black bottle. Don't buy it off a shelf. Buy it if you find it in the health food store. It's got to be in the refrigerated case. And if you pick up excuse me. If you pick up the Fats and Oils newsletter that we have sitting on our table over there, it also tells you where you buy it. The Omega Nutrition in Vancouver. They also have a plant in Ferndale, Washington. And it gives you all the information in the background on the flaxseed oil, the essential fatty acids, the importance of these essential fatty acids. And this is the only oil that will not cause the tumor tissue to regrow. So please don't ask me, what about this oil, what about that oil, what about... it makes no difference. There are no others, please believe me. Yes?
Can you just use flaxseed and then sprinkle it on your cereal or something?
Pardon me?
Flaxseed.
Sprinkle it on your cereal? It's not at all the same. If you have cancer, you cannot eat flaxseed. The flaxseed contains proteins and different things that you're not supposed to be getting. Remain with the flaxseed oil. It is not the same. Now, if you're not seriously ill, you can eat a little flaxseed, but you get such minimal oil, it's not worth it. If you're looking for the effectiveness of the oil, the little bit of seed you're eating isn't going to give it to you. Okay? All right, other questions? Now, the most important thing about the oil, I already told you, it's got to be in the refrigerated case so it doesn't get rancid. It's got to be in a dark place, and it should also be protected from air. Once you open the bottle, be sure you put it back in the fridge. Don't be elegant and put your oil in a nice little glass cruet that ruins the oil with the air and the light. Keep it in the black bottle. Once you open it, it cannot stay in the fridge for more than 3 weeks. If it is in the freezer, you can keep it up to 6 months. In the fridge, unopened, it can stay up to 3 months. Never, never heat it. Never cook with it. Never fry with it. Never bake with it. Avoid also putting it on very hot baked potato that you've just opened and that's steamy. It spoils it. It not only takes the good materials away, it changes them into harmful substances. It is not a cooking oil. It must be used raw, and only raw and cold. Okay? I can't hear you. Could you speak up? The lady's asking about lecithin. Yes, you could use dry lecithin. Stay with the flaxseed oil. It's best. It is high in the linolenic and linoleic acids. It is absolutely the best. Okay? People usually look for other things. They particularly want to take pills. Let us stay away from the pills and the capsules. It's always best to use the fresh, live materials. It's better. Everybody is so brainwashed and so directed. From the time kids are yay high, they see on TV a pill for every problem, okay? Let's get that out of our systems. And these instant little things things that we use to help, instant pill, instant relief, instant this, is not the answer. Okay? Let's stay with the live and active natural substances. They work better.
What do you feel about E-complex?
How do I feel about E-complex? The complex mixed tocopherols are fine if you do not have cancer. I said the only oil a cancer patient can handle is flaxseed oil. What about the E that comes in the oily capsule? Causes tumor tissue to grow. But if you don't have cancer, you can take E. All right? Now, yeah, dry stuff is okay too. Let's always stay with as natural a substance as possible. Okay? Remember that. It's so important. Okay? It tells you in the book, in the appendix especially, there's certain vitamins we cannot use for cancer patients. The cancer has a tendency to grab it and thrive on it. That goes for the A and D in oily substances, goes for the E in oil, and it goes for some of the B, like the brewer's yeast, for instance, is a yeast material similar to cancer tissue. Cancer thrives on it. So we have to be very careful with number of vitamins. It tells you exactly in the book.
What do you think of homeopathic medicine?
What do I think of homeopathy? I'm very much in favor of it. It has usually no harm. It's in tiny, tiny amounts, but it doesn't heal cancer. And I'd like to please stay with the subject I'm dealing with. Right now we're talking about oils.
Does this book have a program for a person that's healthy?
Yes, there's a suggested program for healthy people, yes. All right, our next subject is organic food. I went into this at some length already this morning. I'd like to restate it because it's so important, and I had some questions about it. If food grows on a deficient soil, or on soil that is poorly fertilized with only artificial fertilizer, there's no way that the food can be rich in all the nutrients that it would normally contain. If any normal plants need upward of 50 minerals in the soil, NPK, the artificial fertilizer, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, is not adequate. It damages the soil. It makes for improper growth of plants. Okay? Sometimes they grow very large. If they get thirsty from the foods that they are given, they pick up a lot of water. Like your body, if you have too much sodium, you pick up fluid, you blow up, you're full of edema. That's not healthy. Okay? The plants also, when they pick up improper balances and haven't got adequate nutrients, they cannot be healthy. They haven't got the natural defenses against the bugs and the fungi and whatever else attacks plants. And then they're sick. And in order for the farmers to even have a crop, now they spray. And they often spray already while the plants are in blossom. And it's not only sprayed on the plants, it's on the fruit, it's on the soil, it goes into the roots, it goes all over. There's no way you can avoid it. It goes into your plants. You can't wash it off, you can't peel it off. Okay, so you get plants that are deficient in nutrients, and because they are deficient, they are sick, and because they are sick, they get sprayed. Like you get treated with antibiotics, they get sprayed, and they have poison residue, and you eat it. No matter how hard you try to get rid of it, you can't. Even if you got rid of it, you still have deficient plants. These plants are deficient in the nutrients because the soil doesn't have them. So the only answer is organic foods. Organic means that the soil gets all the nutrients it needs, that it gets composted vegetable material, composted that is, decayed, and the bacteria break it down, and the earthworms break it down. And you also want to make sure that the plants have some minerals. And you usually want to have a little manure on the plants. Now, we have a book over there on gardening. But to make just a quick, short idea of what the soil should contain, we like to have compost from mineral matter, from vegetable waste from your kitchen. One of the best materials is, for instance, what's left over from your juicing. That's already ground up, right? So when it's ground up and you put it in the compost, it composts very easily and very quickly. So you have a nice pile of maybe a foot of compost, and you want to add 2 or 3 inches of minerals, because the soil requires minerals. Now, some of your best mineral combinations are granite dust. Okay? Granite dust. And where do you get granite dust? Very easy. Places that grind headstones. They got a lot of powder lying around. Take it. They love for you to take it away. Put it on your compost. 2-3 inches. Okay? These minerals are extremely important. Now, you may remember, it's not long ago, that Mount St. Helens blew her top. You remember that? Following which, there were weeks of ashes falling in the surrounding area. You remember that? And the farmers and everybody were horrified, and they were sure that their soil was ruined. On the contrary, their plants were healthy that they had never been before. They had the biggest cabbages as they had never seen before. They had the healthiest, richest soil from these minerals that had fallen out of the mountain there, the ashes. Extremely rich in nutrients. And they had the best fruits and vegetables. Trees, apple trees that had little wormy nothings, all of a sudden were growing big, beautiful apples free of worms and bugs, with all the nutrients and all the defenses in. Okay? So if you live in an area where you happen to be able to find volcanic ash, that's wonderful. If not, you can use things like I mentioned earlier, like granite dust, or some other source of ground up mineral dust is excellent. Okay? You want to put that on top. Then you want to put on top of that some manure, but avoid chicken manure. Chicken are some of the worst, sickest animals of all. And those of you who have been told that red meat is bad and you don't eat red meat, you eat chicken, you make a big mistake. Chicken often is worse than red meat. Chicken are such sick animals. Dr. Virginia Livingston, who studied chicken for many, many years, found that any chicken, unless they scratch outside and get fresh shoots and fresh worms and fresh seeds, if they are fed commercially, those chickens are extremely sick animals. They usually, from the time they hatch, they have to be injected or they don't even hatch. From the time they hatch, if they are not slaughtered on a certain day, a few days later they're dead of disease. And that's the food that's supposed to be healthy for you. So you want to avoid chicken, even if it's organically grown and free of hormones and so on. It's still flesh, it's still deteriorated, it's still fat, it's not good. But certainly if it's commercially raised chicken, you want to stay very far away from it. Now, therefore, also the chicken manure is not good, is not healthy. And that's another thing that's most interesting. I forget now who did these experiments. Oh, yes. That's in the book by Pottinger on cats. We have that book there, too. Pottinger, who was an MD, made experiments with cats. He didn't do anything to them. He didn't hurt them or harm them in any way, except he changed their diet. He had 6 groups of cats. The first group he fed fresh, raw organ meats. The second group he fed fresh, raw, unpasteurized milk. The third group he fed the same organ meats but cooked. The fourth group the same milk but pasteurized. The fifth group condensed milk, and the sixth group evaporated milk. Now, the first 2 groups, the animals that had raw and undamaged, not heat-damaged proteins, he watched them growing and reproducing and healthy, and the second and third and fourth and fifth generation, no problems. But the others that were eating the same food but heat-damaged, the same organ meats but cooked, the first generation was relatively healthy. But in the second generation, instead of having 17% calcium in their bones at death, they didn't do anything. They didn't kill them. At death, they had, instead of 17 as the healthy animals, they had 11. Third generation, 7. Fourth generation, 4% calcium. And there was no fifth generation. They couldn't reproduce. The same they found also in other areas. The animals on the cooked foods started to get damaged teeth, damaged gums. They started to get allergic diseases. They started, of course, to get leukemias and other problems. They were no longer kind and friendly and gentle. They started to get aggressive and mean. And they were sick. Now, in the second generation, even the early third, if he now changed them to the raw foods, the raw meat or the raw milk, he was able to reverse most of the damage. But on the third and fourth in the generation, and no fifth, they couldn't even reproduce. Some of the females had dead litters, and so on. So the heat-damaged proteins were extremely bad, but that wasn't all. If he used their droppings, their waste, their feces, to fertilize soil, then he put beans on them. They didn't grow. The feces of the healthy animals, of the raw-fed animals, they were very good, and they produced good, normal, healthy bean shoots and plants. No, cats are meat-eating animals. I doubt it. They have a whole different structure. Dogs is a different story. Cats are not vegetarian animals. Neither are we meat-eating animals, so we shouldn't eat meat. But that's a different story. Anyway, so we are getting back to the fertilizer. The droppings, the feces of the sick animals are bad for your soil, and the droppings of these animals that were damaged because of improper feeding did not produce healthy plants. Okay? Now, that's why we insist that the patients must have organic fruits and vegetables, free of poison and rich in nutrients. Both are important. Free of poison and deficient is useless. How do you know that you're really getting organic foods? It's a bit of a problem. Here in California, we're lucky. We have very thorough controls and certifications. And almost any organic store and health food store that carries organic fruits and vegetables, they're pretty honest and decent. You can ask who the growers are. You can check with the growers. But they're pretty decent. I know in San Diego we have 2 or 3 really excellent stores. They will tell you this is organic and this isn't, marked, okay? So that you can get organic fruits and vegetables. Some of the grocery stores, even like Ralph's, they have a few items that are organic. I buy it because I want to encourage these people to carry more of this stuff, okay? But organic, it's got to be rich in nutrients and free of chemicals. So just dipping it in chlorine or in salt or something like that to get rid of the chemicals isn't enough, because you still have deficient food. Okay? Are there questions on organic food?
Would it hurt to put a little chlorine in water that you wash your carrots in?
Would it hurt to put chlorine in water you wash your carrots in? What for? You want to damage your hands? You absorb this stuff.
No, I don't put my hands in it, but I thought the soil around the carrots.
The soil around the carrots doesn't do you any harm, but if any chlorine remains, that does hurt you. Okay, we have, unfortunately, here also in the United States, a problem. Everything has to be perfectly clean. We use all kinds of chemicals to make things clean. People that are professional house cleaners are very ill because of the chemicals and all the cleansers, okay? And sometimes a little bit of dirt that you can see is nowhere near as dangerous as all the chemicals, cleansers, bleaches, and so on that you don't see. Okay? Like I said a little bit earlier, we have kids here that are perfectly clean and scrubbed and have nice clean clothes and clean shoes and socks and everything. In Mexico, you see dirty kids with dirty feet and barefoot and dirty clothes, but they are healthier. They don't get the canned, jarred, clean baby foods. They get natural, fresh foods. I remember when I was a kid pulling carrots out of the soil, rubbing it on my sleeve and eating it. You think the soil hurt me? It's the chemicals that hurt. Okay? Okay. Yes?
If a person should choose to grow their own organic vegetables, and you grow more than you can use, is it not good to freeze it? Save it?
The question is, if you grow your own organic fruits and vegetables, is it good to freeze it? No, the answer is no. When you freeze, let's take a string bean. You put a string bean in the freezer, you take it out, let it melt. You hold it up, is it nice and firm? No, right? It droops. Why? Because the ice crystals that form change the cell walls. Along with it also you change the colloidal structure of the food, you change the minerals and vitamins, they're less easily assimilated. It's no longer the same food. The answer is no, the only way that you can preserve food without damaging it is by drying it. Not with a very hot dryer, with mild heat. Drying it is the best way if you want to preserve it. Okay? Such as beans and tomatoes, there are all kinds of ways. Several firms produce dryers that low heat, don't want to heat it too much, but on low heat you can preserve it some, but you should always have some fresh food along with dried.
People who live back where they can't grow things year-round.
That's right. That's right. If they're ill and they have to ship it in, they have to ship in fresh foods. But if they have organic things, they can dry. Okay? It's a process by which they, under pressure, shoot things into a very cold. It doesn't work. It's no use. Freezing is useless.
It's dry.
Yeah, I know. It's dried. The water is evaporated in the process. It's still not good. It can't be used. Okay? All right. That much for organic food. Extremely important. If you want to heal, you cannot heal with sick, toxic, damaged food. You can't heal a sick, toxic, damaged body. You've got to get organic food.
Wouldn't it be better to eat everything raw?
Would it be better to eat everything raw? Yes, possibly. But you see, when you have a patient who already has a relatively poor appetite and poor stomach function and poor intestinal function, and you give them 13 glasses of raw juice, and you now give them only raw food, they won't eat it. But a nice pot of soup they're going to take. And along with the little vegetables and the baked potato they're going to eat. And that way you can get additional food into them. You see, the food, the juices alone, the 13 juices alone on the Gerson therapy represent about 17 pounds worth of raw food. So you need a little cooked, you need some additional soft bulk. Okay? All right. Now we go to the subject that I mark forbidden items. That's again this forbidden list. And it's not just all foods, there are a few other items on there that don't qualify for foods. That's on page 238. And I'd just like to mention a few of them because I get questions. Why this and why that and why this? Now, I'd like to first of all stress that there is a reason for every single item. Why not? And why yes? However, if Dr. Gerson had given the reasoning behind every single item, the book would have probably been 1,000 pages and we'd still be sitting here next Christmas. Okay? Therefore, we have to ask you, please, I'm going to try to explain to you a few of the whys. But I'm going to ask you, I cannot go into every single one. You're going to have to take Dr. Gerson's word for it. He tried it out. He worked with it. He had recovered patients. And when he did the things the other way around, patients didn't get well. There was a reason for every single item. Do this and don't do that, and forbidden this and you can take that. Okay? I'd like to go into a few of them to explain them to you. But don't ask me to go into every single item. It would lead too far. Okay? For instance, under forbidden foods, of course, the first group of items is clear and self-explanatory. Bottled, canned, frozen, preserved, refined, salted, smoked, and sulfured foods. There's no question about that. I don't have to explain. But then comes avocados. Why did Dr. Gerson say you can't have avocados? I think many of you know that avocados are very high in fats and oils. Just the kind of fats a cancer patient can't digest. Also, the kind of oil that has a tendency to deposit in your arteries and cause you trouble. So avocados are forbidden. Okay? Too high in oils, too high in fats. Then right underneath it says berries. Now Dr. Gerson forbade berries. Berries are high in aromatic acids. There are also certain spices that are forbidden, high in aromatic acids. Aromatics, for instance, pineapple. When you eat it, that's also forbidden. When you eat pineapple raw, what happens? It burns your tongue, it burns your lips. It's very harsh, high in aromatics. It disturbs the healing. You can't heal cancer with it. No pineapple. Berries are similar. There are a number of people that are allergic to berries. That's the problem. The allergies come from the aromatic acids. In order not to disturb the healing of a cancer patient, pineapple and berries are forbidden. All other fruits are okay. So don't please ask me, what about mangoes, what about papayas, what about apples and pears and plums? Yes, they're okay. These are the ones, berries and pineapples, that are forbidden. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. The question is, are these forbidden ones all right for healthy people? Yes. Yes, if they don't cause you special problems. Yes. It's better to eat more of the other fruit, but you can eat those. You can eat berries and pineapples. They cause you a problem, you stop. Pineapples, the lady's comments, are supposed to help you digest. Yes, they are high in certain enzymes that are perfectly good. But that doesn't mean you can have them for a cancer patient. You must avoid them because of the disturbing qualities. Now let me go back a little earlier this morning. I showed you why caffeine and coffee beans are very, very valuable for the coffee enemas. They're extremely low in sodium and they're extremely high in potassium. Does that mean you can eat coffee beans? They're good for you? No. There are other problems in coffee beans, therefore you can't eat them. Okay? And just the fact that pineapple is high in certain enzymes doesn't mean that we can use it for cancer patients. Okay? There can always be some disturbing factor involved. All right? You will also find, for instance, cucumbers are forbidden. Now, cucumbers are a vegetable, okay? Why are cucumbers forbidden? On the one hand, they're relatively high in sodium, but that's not the problem. Cucumbers are forbidden because they simply do not agree with the juices. If you eat raw cucumber and then every hour comes a glass of juice, it sits like lead in your stomach. You can't digest it, so don't eat it. Go ahead. Ma'am, the Russians may have eaten cucumbers, but they didn't drink carrot juice. Has nothing to do with it. Okay? We are talking about patients who are receiving a lot of juice. And a juice and cucumbers do not agree. Therefore, we have to avoid cucumbers.
We are only talking about patients that have cancer.
No, ma'am. The question is, do we only talk about patients who have cancer? We are talking about all patients who receive a number of glasses of juice. And that goes for patients who have diabetes and heart disease and multiple sclerosis and osteoarthritis and osteoporosis and you name it. We are not just, this is not just a cancer therapy. Dr. Gerson says in the first chapter, it is not a cancer therapy. It helps the body to heal itself. And you saw here we had a patient who had severe allergies, who didn't have cancer, right? It is not just a cancer therapy. I'm going to make a differentiation between cancer patient and non-cancer patient. There are certain things that are different. But when we say that cucumbers are poorly digested with the juice, well, all the patients get juice. This is not just a cancer patient. Okay? Yes, sir.
Let me ask a question about healthy, according to these avocado berries, looking for healthy patients, healthy people. Earlier, the experiment you talked about the rabbits with the tar painted on the ears, and it took so long for that tar to manifest as tumors or being. How do you draw the line? Cancer might take between a healthy patient and a healthy person and an unhealthy person. How do you know?
The question is, how do you know what is a healthy person and what is not a healthy person? That's a real big question. You don't know. There have been reports, for instance, by chemists who have studied this. And according to some of the lectures, and I don't care exactly where the number is, it has been shown that if your liver functions up to roughly 35% of normal. Now, the liver is a large organ. If about 35% of the liver functions about normally, you are functioning and you don't have any problem. If your function drops just under that, there is just a line there somewhere. Could be 33, 34, 30. I don't know exactly where the line is. If your function drops just below that, you have chronic disease. And it could be any one chronic disease. Whether it's arthritis or cancer or diabetes or colitis, makes no difference. Okay, now the trouble is there are no adequate tests that show you exactly where your liver stands. There are no tests that show you to what degree your liver functions. So the only thing I can tell you, you're best off at all times to support your liver with fresh and live foods, with good organic food. And if once in a while you want to eat a fancy meal because there's a Christmas or a family holiday or a wedding, go ahead. But if you deteriorate and allow your body to deteriorate at all times, every day, all the time, if you never supplement your body with the good nutrients, with the live juices, with the fresh foods, with the organic salads and vegetables, you're going to go downhill at one point. Some of us a little slower and some faster. Some of us who have good heredity and whose grandparents lives on the farm and they are still fine and growing strong at 90, better off than others. I had migraines at 8 and I had TB at 12. I didn't have that kind of heredity, okay? And I don't know what yours is, and nobody knows exactly where they stand, and there is no way of determining it. So if you want to eat hamburgers all the time, you are going to make your body eventually break down. Whether it's in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or 20 years, I don't know. Okay? That's always a problem. You don't know. Yes?
Do legumes have any place in the diet?
Do legumes have any place in the diet? No.
None at all.
Interestingly, you see, legumes are very interesting food. Legumes are essentially seeds for the next generation. They're dry. They're seeds. They just sit there. They're dormant foods. They're not live. They don't deteriorate. They don't waste and spoil, right? They just sit. Now, how is it possible? It's a food, and it's a material that you put in the soil, it comes back to life. Well, all seeds, our good Lord has endowed them with an enzyme inhibitor so that they sleep. They're in a dormant way until they fall in a soft, moist, warm soil. Then they start to sprout. Then they come back to life. In the meantime, these same enzyme inhibitors that keep them dormant inhibit enzymes when you eat this stuff. What happens when you eat a lot of beans? Everybody knows it causes gas, right? Well, why does it do that? Enzyme inhibitors. Why do you want to eat enzyme inhibitors? When you're already toxic and when you're dealing with a seriously ill person who already has digestive problems, you don't want to inhibit their enzymes more and cause them gas. So we keep away from legumes. There's one other problem with legumes. A lot of people, nutritionists, tell you that if you're a vegetarian, eat a lot of peas and beans and chickpeas and, legumes. Well, because they're high in proteins. Well, yes, they may be high in proteins, but it's the wrong form of protein. They are too high in L-arginine and low in L-lysine. They are not in a good balance. And therefore, they also tend to depress your immune system. Therefore, we want to avoid them on the Gerson therapy. Okay? Yes?
Green beans too?
They are live and green. Do they spoil?
Yep.
Okay.
Does all that change when you sprout them?
Yes, but not enough. We have other problems with sprouts. We have a newsletter which unfortunately we didn't get packed, we didn't bring it. We have a newsletter, a study that was done on alfalfa sprouts. We had always excellent results with patients who had lupus. Wonderful recoveries in all of these problems, as well as cancer. One time we had two patients, two ladies, who read all about sprouts and sprouting. And they decided that rather than to eat these wonderful salads that we prepare, these big salad bowls, which you saw some, they wanted to have the live sprouts, the fresh live sprouts. They've sprouted a whole lot of stuff. And the lady with the lupus, who was already healed for a year and a half, had a huge new outbreak with the typical butterfly and the whole problem. And the lady with the cancer got worse and worse, and she eventually died. And we were horrified, had no idea what was wrong. About 2 years later, the study came out about alfalfa sprouts. And it turns out that the sprouts, the new shoots, is probably nature's way of protecting them. The new shoots have incomplete amino acids. And this incomplete albumin protein substance is called alkanabinine and is toxic. And has in healthy animals and healthy monkeys caused lupus. Therefore, we have absolutely cut out all alfalfa sprouts. But because we don't know about other sprouts and we don't have the kind of money it takes to keep animals into research, we have, just to be on the safe side, cut out all sprouts. Because the new young shoots are the early ones, the incomplete amino acids, and could well be toxic. Nature probably protects them that way, and the animals don't eat them. They're smarter than we are. So we have cut out all sprouts. All sprouts. Now we had, for instance, a man who had been our patient, and he had recovered. And I got a telephone call from him one day, and he said he had new problems. He had burning in the bladder and burning with his urination, and he was even having occasional bleeding. And what was, I said, I don't know, what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing the therapy. Have you added anything? Yes, I'm taking alfalfa tablets. So I said, cut them right out immediately. And call me in a week and let me know what happened. He says in 2 days it was all cleared up. Okay? Now, we can only talk of experience. I can't research all the other sprouts, but because we don't know, we want to be on the safe side, we've cut out all sprouts. Yes?
There's a theory that, of course, Ann Wigmore, I don't know if you've heard
I know
of
all about it.
But what about the wheatgrass juice? They found that there's something in
Okay,
there.
what about the wheatgrass juice is the question. Wheatgrass juice, how much of it can you drink at a time? About 2 ounces. We give an 8-ounce glass of green juice 4 times a day. And these green juices made from salad greens are extremely valuable, have the same essential nutrients. And they cause no irritation, no stomach upset, they cause no intestinal upset. So we stay away from wheatgrass because it causes trouble. And we stay with the green juices that have the same nutrients, that have the same good effect, okay? All right. Now, we go to a couple of the other items I just want to touch on. It says here, for instance, Epsom salts. Now, you don't go around eating Epsom salts, right? What do? You take them and put your feet in them to bathe. Well, it says no, because these things are absorbed through the skin. So don't bathe in Epsom salts, okay? It says, for instance, soybeans and soy products. Now, soy products, first of all, of course, fall into the area of legumes. They're dried seeds. But soy products tend to do terrible things with allergies. And soybeans have very poorly balanced proteins, amino acids, and should not be used. Besides, they're high in oil. So we cannot in any manner or form use soy products or soy, what is it called, tofu, and even unsalted is out. Soy products are out. Okay? Yes? If soy product, if lecithin is made of soy, you don't take it. Okay? Don't you need protein? Oh, here comes the wonderful question I always get. I'm looking forward to it. I think I already spoke about it this morning. One of our major problems in the so-called developed nations, or in the rich industrialized nations, is too much protein. The excess protein is causing most of our diseases.
If you're vegetarian, don't you need some protein?
If you're vegetarian, don't you need some proteins? What says when you're vegetarian you're not getting any? Let me ask you, what about a cow? Doesn't the cow need proteins? Where do the cow's proteins come from? Huh? From the grass, maybe? Grass. We don't eat grass. Now what do we eat? All right, now let's go into that a little bit, because it's very important. We get this question because people are so brainwashed and don't know what they're talking about. And the doctors and the nutritionists tell them you need proteins to build tissue, right? So where am I getting my proteins? How come I can sit here for 6 hours and talk? Okay, first of all, carrot juice. Now let's look at this for a minute. What are the creatures that need the most proteins? Babies. Babies. Right? They got to grow, right? They got to grow fast. They're born 7.5 pounds. In about 3.5 months, they double their weight. By the end of the year, they weigh over 20. They've tripled their weight. Don't they need proteins? Where do they get it?
Milk.
Mother's milk. Mother's milk. How much protein does mother's milk have?
3 or 4%?
Not quite. 1.8%. How much protein does carrot juice have? 1.4%. How much protein does baked potato have? 1.8%. How much protein does oatmeal have? About the same. Okay. Now, we had a Japanese physician who very kindly one day wanted to know how come these patients were all doing so well. He was eating this therapy. How come for 6 months he was eating this vegetarian therapy without proteins? How come he was feeling good? He took himself a book which showed the content of foods, all foods. And he looked up just what our patients get. All the carrots and all the carrot juice, all the vegetables and all the baked potato and oatmeal and all the other vegetables and fruit and everything all together. And with the 13 glasses of juice, he even brought it down to 18 pounds of food. We actually get more, about 20. He found that those patients get 40 grams of protein a day in carrot juice, in other juice, in vegetables and potatoes and so on. More than adequate. And the kind of protein you can digest easily and assimilate. Not the kind that leaves a residue that feeds tumor tissue. For instance, they have found in schizophrenics certain protein fractions of poorly digested animal proteins. And these fractions take a strange form. They are like spiral formed. They're not the normal breakdown product of the protein digestive process. And the body can't excrete them properly. So they accumulate in the blood, and when this particular blood hits the brain with that particular protein fraction in it, then you get the schizophrenic symptoms. This irritates the nerve tissue. And you get these peculiar changes of perception, okay? They have taken those protein fractions and distilled them out and injected them into healthy volunteers, and what happens? They get schizophrenic symptoms. But the healthy volunteers, after 5-6 hours, are healthy again, because their body is able to break down this protein fraction and to the end product and get rid of it, and they're fine again. Okay? But the schizophrenic has that problem, cannot digest animal proteins. So what do? All these so-called sanitariums, the state hospitals where they treat mental disease, right? They're required by law to give 3 protein meals. Do you think anybody's going to get well that way? On the Gerson therapy, do you think they get well of schizophrenia? Yes. Okay. So the major problem, the same with cancer. Cancer is partly a problem of improper ability to digest protein to the end product, and the tumor tissue thrives on it, grabs it. The same problem in a cancer patient is inability to digest fat to the end product. So the fat, animal fats, as well as all other fats and oils, with the one exception, which is flaxseed oil, those fats are not digested properly to the end product, and the intermediate products are not excreted properly, and the tumor tissue thrives on it. So when they tell a cancer patient, oh, you're losing a lot of weight, eat a lot of meat and cream, they're feeding the tumors. Okay? And the whole problem, almost all of our chronic degenerative diseases today are caused by excess fat and excess protein. Okay? So where do we get our good proteins? Here. Pardon? Do we use nuts? Forbidden list nuts. Essentially, are nuts not seeds? And are they not very high in oils? Forbidden. Okay? Nuts are forbidden.
How about almonds?
Is almond a nut?
What about cottage cheese?
What about cottage cheese? Cottage cheese, as you buy it in the store, is creamed and salted. But on the Gerson therapy, after the first 6 to 10 weeks, where we give absolutely no animal proteins whatsoever, after the first 6 to 10 weeks, when most tumors are gone, and when the body is beginning to regenerate, we can give a little bit of non-fat, unsalted animal proteins, which nowadays means yogurt, non-fat, unflavored, unsalted, untreated yogurt. And if you're a little bit lucky, like we are here in California, we can buy the non-fat raw skim milk that Stuve puts out, formerly Altadena. I buy half a gallon or 2.5 gallons of the skim milk, sit them in a pot of warm water, and after about 24 to 26 hours, it curdles. In the can, the way it comes, in the container with nothing, in the sealed half-gallon container. Okay? It curdles, I pass it through a cloth, and I have raw, unsalted, and non-fat cottage cheese. That is okay. Otherwise, the buttermilk you get nowadays is a different problem again. My father puts into the book, in some cases, that he was allowing buttermilk and cottage cheese. Okay, well, that meant unsalted and non-fat. But nowadays, you get buttermilk that's called cultured. Already got to be careful when it's cultured or fortified or something like that. Cultured buttermilk is usually buttermilk that is rotten milk, probably homogenized, so it has fat in it. It's damaged, it's no longer saleable, so they treat it. They put some thickening in it and some flavoring in it and some salt in it. Now it's cultured buttermilk, and you can't drink it. It's bad. It's rotten, chemically treated, flavored junk. Okay? So buttermilk is out. Unless, and for a while you were able to get Stuve's raw churned buttermilk. Now that was okay, but it's no longer available. I haven't seen it now in a long time. Yeah.
When you're a vegetarian like you are, what would it be? Do you get B12 in the diet that you have?
You get adequate B12, you don't have to worry. That's another fallacy that they tell you don't get B12. I haven't had any B12 shots probably in 20 years. And I'm not anemic, I assure you. Okay?
What about grains and rice?
What about grains and rice? They're seeds, same as legumes. They're heavy, they have enzyme inhibitors, they're difficult to digest, and we keep it to a minimum. Now you may have seen on the table here at lunch a little bit of bread. That's whole grain unsalted rye. And a little bit of bread is permissible provided you have eaten the whole rest of your meal as a little snack. But it should not take the place of your meal. You shouldn't live on bread as a sandwich. Okay? You should live on fresh, live, cooked, fresh and raw prepared foods. Yes?
Is that unleavened?
I'm sorry?
Is that unleavened?
The lady asked, is it unleavened? No. It can be sourdough, but it has to be whole grain, organic, unsalted bread. Okay? And I don't say wheat because wheat is not a good grain, is forbidden. I said sourdough. You can use a little bit of yeast, but it's better not to. Okay?
Okay, when I go to work for lunch, I can go and buy a baked potato. They make them in a microwave. They make them baked potatoes.
I don't know. If you are a cancer patient and you need to go to work, there are ways of doing it, but you got to go home for lunch. You can do it, but if you're a cancer patient, you can't use a microwaved potato. The microwaves change the protein in the potato. They make it poorly assimilated. And if you are somewhere around the microwave oven, like the cook, the lady in the kitchen, she gets waved, she gets cooked too. Microwaves are very dangerous. They cook the cook, and they make the food poorly assimilable. Okay? Yes?
I wanted to clarify something. You said you took a half a gallon of raw skim milk, put it in warm water, and then after a certain period of time,
it curdles. Right in the closed, sealed, half-gallon container.
Then it takes, what, half an hour, 2 hours?
26 hours.
It takes 24 to 28 hours to curdle.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, now we go on to the next subject. And that's spices. Spices go in the same subject as aromatic acids, and there are only certain ones that are permitted. Now, the reason why I specifically want to go into that is on the top of page 242. It says, and please be very careful, my father expressed himself very carefully and very exactly. To vary flavors, you may also use very small quantities of the following. Parenthesis, big capital letters, no others. Okay? So then he gives a list of spices that you may use. And if you are asking what about this, 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 and this, if it's not on the list, it's no. It says no others. Besides, it says very small quantities, because the aromatic acids in spices can disturb the healing, the same as the aromatic acids in pineapple berries and so on. Okay? So if the spice you want to use isn't on the list, it's no. The same goes for the green juice. Now, we give the carrot juice, carrot apple and carrot juice, very, very important. But the green juice is also extremely important. So, now, let me tell you what it says for the green juice. Procure as many of the various kinds of leaves as possible mentioned below, parenthesis, no others. Parenthesis closed. Then it gives you a list of items to use. Now, people keep telling me, but I can't find this and I can't find that. But does it say you have to use every one of them? It doesn't. It says as many as possible, doesn't it? Let me say it again. Procure as many of the various kinds of leaves as possible, mentioned below. So somebody says, oh, but I can't find escarole or endive. Okay, use romaine and the other head letters. Okay? And sometimes you can't find one of the other things. All right, then they don't go in. Then it says, add 1 medium apple for each glass when juicing. Why? Why are the apples so important? First of all, apples are very high in pectin, which makes them very easily digestible, but it also makes the green juice more digestible, which is the reason why we don't use wheatgrass, but the lettuce greens. It's easily digestible. You can drink 4 full glasses and never get an upset stomach. You can't do that with wheatgrass, okay? But the apple that's in it is a very important factor to make it digestible. Plus, apple in the juice is also very high in potassium. And we want to get the potassium into the cells because the tumor cells can't grow when they're adequately supplied with potassium and enzymes and oxygen, which is what we force in with the green juice. Okay? So all of these items are very important. And please, when it says this in the book, then do it as it says, whether you understand it or no, whether I have had a chance to explain it or no. Please believe that there is a reason for each of these. Do this and don't do that. And take as many as possible, no others. You won't find spinach on the list. You won't find celery on the list. So you're going to put it in the juice? No way. In the juice? Oh. Did I say you can't put in the lettuce? Oh. Okay. Let me explain again. It doesn't say, but here is another question. Yes, you did eat celery in your lettuce today. When it says for salads what you can put on the salads, there it says celery. And you can also put a little celery in the soup. But once you put it in a juice, you use a lot, then it's too much sodium. Okay? So you can't put it in the juice. If you put spinach in the juice, you get too much oxalic acid. You can't do that either. All right? So each of these items, there's a reason. You can eat it one way, you can't put it in juice. Okay?
What does oxalic acid do?
Oxalic acid, what does it do? It's very harsh on the intestinal tract. It disturbs and causes irritation and gas and digestive trouble. Okay?
Are those lists of spices and green juice materials long?
Are the lists of spices and green juice materials long? No. There are 9 items in the green juices that you may use and that you should use. And then there are, about 20 items in spices. But it does not say basil on there, for instance. It does not say marjoram. It does not say oregano. Marjoram, yes. Thyme, yes. Oregano, no. All right? Too high in aromatic acids. Ginger isn't on the list. They're irritating spices. Nutmeg isn't on the list. Nut, it's a nut, right? Okay, yes.
Do you like chlorella and spirulina?
We can use a little spirulina, yes.
How about chlorella?
Okay, too, but use the fresh, raw foods. Is it raw, is it fresh, or is it a pill or powder?
It's a powder.
Okay, eat it fresh.
Cayenne pepper.
What about cayenne pepper? Is it on the list? No. Peppers and green pepper, hot pepper, white pepper, black pepper. When they are hot peppers, like jalapenos, it's no. The green pepper, the sweet green pepper is okay. But it's always the hot spices, the high aromatics that are out. Okay? Cinnamon is out. Okay? How about what?
Curry?
How about curry? Is it on the list? Don't ask. If it's on the list, yes. If it's not on the list, no. Okay? You're going to have the book if you want to do the therapy. I can't answer every single item. It's no. Okay? All right. Now, now we come to an extremely important subject, is juicing. Juicing, juicer, juice machines. The right way to extract juice. There's a right way and a wrong way. Okay? All of you who do wish to do the therapy and who want to have the juicer information, I have prepared a sheet which tells you exactly what kind of juicer and what combinations of juicer is efficient and is adequate for the cancer patient. The less seriously ill patient can sometimes do on a less good combination of juicers. But now let me tell you why these machines are so important. Dr. Gerson very specific to require special equipment for the best juice extraction for patients on the Gerson therapy. He found, and it was later confirmed, that centrifugal juicers are not acceptable. Centrifugal juicers swing out a lot of water, you don't get the minerals, you don't get the enzymes, you lose most of your value, you throw it away. Besides, that's not the only problem. It's got to go into the sick patient, and the patient isn't getting it. Centrifugal juicers are not acceptable. In the book also, it very specifically states, excuse me, it says very carefully here, when it comes to juicing, use a separate grinder and separate press. In other words, what you want to do is grind your juices first. Grind the material. Okay? Then it's finely ground and mushed. Then you want to mix it. You want to particularly mix the apples and carrots. Excuse me. Okay. Now, when you have the apples and carrots mixed, the apples, apparently the acid of the apples, help the carrot, the mushed up cells of the carrots to release the minerals. And by mixing the ground up mush first, then putting it in a very strong, tight filter cloth and under pressure, that's how you get the best juice extraction. Okay? Now, of course, the best juicer is the Norwalk. We have one here, and the juicers that we had, that was made on the Norwalk juicer. But when you use, any of you who happen to have a Champion, you can use the Champion as a grinder. Now, the Champion has an arrangement where you can put a plate under it, so instead of the juice dripping out, you just grind the material and it comes out ground in the front. That is okay, provided now that you have a press. That material should be placed, first stirred, mixed, placed into a tight cloth, and then into a press that presses it. Now, there are several presses available, and that's all given on this sheet. So any of you who are serious about doing the therapy, it tells you what kind of juicer and combination of machines you can use that fulfill the requirement of Dr. Gerson's separate grinder and separate press. Okay? So that's available here. It also tells you where to find it and how much it costs, etc., etc. All right. Now, are there any questions about the juicers?
What if you just take the, I'm thinking of fruits, and put them in a blender, you don't take anything out, you just mush everything up?
Wonderful idea. If you just take the fruit and put them in a blender, or the carrots, and then eat it all. Can you eat 20 pounds?
I'm not talking about carrots, I'm just talking about maybe an apple and orange.
Okay, but we are requiring the patients to drink 17 pounds worth of food, of juices. Can you drink that many? Not when the fiber is in it, not when the pulp is in it. We are talking about healing patients who need that huge intake. If you just want to enjoy a fresh, cup, blended, fine. But you're not juicing. Juicing is a different story. You remove the fiber in order to increase the intake. You can't possibly take 20 pounds worth of food with the fiber. The only way you can take it in is by removing most of the fiber and therefore being able to drink it. Okay? I can't sit here and eat this, but I can drink it, even after I'm full with a meal. Okay? And that's the whole point of juicing, the multiplication of intake. You can take so much more. All right? Yes?
What do you lose on a centrifugal juicer?
All right, what do you lose on the centrifugal juicer is the question. A lot. First of all, through the centrifugal action, you get some of the enzymes destroyed because you get inductive electricity. Also in a blender, you get inductive electricity. But even that's hard to prove and hard to show. But what you definitely can show, and has been shown in laboratory tests, when you have a centrifugal juicer, you largely swing out the water, and you get a little bit of mush, and then after a little while, when it sits, you have just watery stuff on top and a little bit of mush. This is still homogeneous juice after 2 hours. You get about a 20th to a 40th, not 40%, 2 to 5% of the mineral extraction. You get mainly water. You throw away your minerals in your centrifugal, in your centrifuge. Okay? You get very, very minimal. Now you get a little better extraction in the champion. Instead of 20th to a 40th, you get maybe a 15th to a 20th of the mineral extraction. But you still get only very minimal mineral extraction. And also in a champion, when you let the juice sit for a while, have you got one?
No, I haven't.
When you let the juice sit for a little while, you have waterage stuff on the bottom and a little mush on top. That's not good juice. So you throw most of your minerals away instead of getting them into the sick patient. Okay, for maybe you and me, we're not sick and we just want to drink the best possible nutrients, fine. It's still better than Coca-Cola or soda or even water or milk. But it isn't rich in the nutrients that you need to put into the cancer and other chronic disease patient. Okay? Makes a huge difference. While you get, I don't have the figures here in front of me, but it has been tested. While you get approximately, as I said, a 2 to 5% mineral extraction on the centrifugal and the champion, you get up to 60% mineral extraction on the Norwalk or on the press-type juicer. 60% of the available minerals. Some of it are still going to stay in the pulp. That's why I was telling you how excellent the pulp, the remaining press cake, is for composting. Okay? Okay. Yes?
I'm going to mention the glucose.
We are going to get to the medication later. I'd like you to please, if possible, ask questions about the subject that we are covering.
What are the press-type juicers?
What are the press-type juicers? There are two available. One is the Norwalk, very expensive, and one is the K&K. It has all of this with addresses and cost on the list. I shall give it to you if you ask for it later. Okay? I'll have it at the table. All right? Then we go to the next subject. The next subject is cooked foods. You saw at the luncheon here that we give cooked soup, we give baked potatoes, we give cooked vegetables. And I get people telling me, well, most of your food is cooked. Well, that's not good. Shouldn't you get more raw food? Yes, of course. You should get as much as possible raw food. But you see, I can't stress often enough that about 17 pounds worth of food go into the raw juices. So you get the enzymes of roughly 17 pounds worth of food and out of the salad and fruit. And you get at most 2 or 2.5 pounds worth of food that's cooked. Okay? Now, in order for the very sick patient to be able to even handle all those raw juices, and on top of it all the raw salads and fruit, they need a little soft bulk. They need the oatmeal, not just for soft bulk in the morning, but to give you a cushion in the intestinal tract. But the oatmeal also is very high in B complex and is very high in proteins. So it's not just soft bulk, it's very important food. And they need, for instance, the baked potatoes. Are you going to eat raw potatoes? Potatoes are very important, excellent food. They're very high in potassium, very high in protein. They're very important. You're not going to eat raw potatoes, okay? But then when you have drunk all these juices all morning and all afternoon, and you get nothing but a raw food platter for dinner, you're not going to poke at it, you're not going to eat it. But comes a nice plate of hot soup on a cold night, or comes a nice baked potatoes and vegetables, well, you're going to be able to eat that. Which means you can increase the patient's intake. You can give him a soft cushion in the intestinal tract so it doesn't get gassy and spasmic. And you can get more proteins into the body, plus you can vary the food. In other words, you're not just getting the carrots and apple juice, you're not getting the green juice. Now you're getting all the various vegetables, and you know about cruciferous vegetables, the cabbage-type vegetables, how important they are for cancer patients. You already know, I told you how important the potatoes are. You're going to get the green string beans and the fresh green peas and all other green vegetables. All of them are extremely valuable. The enzymes are dead when you cook them. Of course they're dead. But you get 17, 18 pounds worth of raw food enzymes anyway. You get much, much, much more than you can possibly require. Okay? So the cooked foods are important to improve your intake, to improve your protein intake, to get the potatoes and various varieties of vegetables into you. Even in a patient who has normally low appetite, they will and they can eat this kind of food. Now, very often I'm also asked, well, how come all this food is so well done? Well, if you're going to cook it, it should be soft bulk. It should be well done. If you want to eat it raw, eat it raw. But if you eat it half-cooked, you get neither the enzymes, because the enzymes are dead at 140 degrees. The minute it gets over that and it's only part cooked, the enzymes are dead. And when you eat the so-called al dente, or half-cooked vegetables, you're not getting soft bulk, so you're getting no advantage at all. If you want to eat it raw, eat it raw. But if it's going to be cooked for better intake, for soft bulk, for all of the other advantages, then it should be done, not half done. Okay? Are there any questions? Yeah.
You said potatoes are an excellent food. You're talking about the white potatoes and the red potatoes?
White potatoes, red potatoes, yellow fins, pink potatoes, any potatoes you want to eat.
Like sweet potatoes and yams? These are roots, actually.
Sweet potatoes and yams are not potatoes, they're roots. They're a whole different food.
Are they good?
Sweet potatoes are likely to be too sweet. Dr. Gerson restricted them to once a week. Because, first of all, they're not potatoes, and secondly, we don't want to eat a lot of sweeteners to raise the cancer patient's blood sugar. That has a tendency to feed the tumor tissue. So we don't want to have too much sweet potatoes and sweet food. Okay? All right. Are there other questions? Yes?
I just bought some ground turkey. Can I...
You just bought some what?
Ground turkey. Can I cook that up with celery and onions?
I'm sorry, ground jerky?
Turkey.
Oh, turkey.
Yeah.
Turkey?
That's turkey. I thought it's just meat. Turkey is...
Well, but just meat is forbidden. On the Gerson therapy, there's no such thing as any kind of meat and fish and fowl and turkey and none. None.
What about fish? What's that?
What about fish? All right, what about fish?
Farm fresh fish.
Farm fresh fish. Artificially nourished fish, right? Right. Now, when the fish is caught out in the oceans, first of all, the oceans are polluted. And they're full of mercury. And the fish are so-so. Secondly, in the way they are caught, they're usually cooled very quickly in bins with brine. What's brine? Salt, sodium. Okay? So they're already treated. Okay? And often they're frozen. Then they're melted, and then you eat them, and that's supposed to be healthy. It's not. And secondly, that's animal protein, and animal protein deteriorates in heating and cooking. I mentioned earlier this morning at a lecture already that there was research done at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, very, very famous and prestigious, where a PhD doctor, she found that when animal flesh, meat or chicken or turkey or meat or fish is heated to 212 degrees or over, which means boiled, cooked, fried, baked, any old way, it deteriorates into polycyclic amides, which are carcinogens. Okay? Now, even fish contains fats. And while some of the fish contains relatively valuable fats that are also found in the flaxseed oil, once you cook it, you've destroyed much of that value. And once you cook the fish, you've damaged the assimilable proteins. So on the Gerson therapy, for at least 2 years, you don't have any fish or meat or animal proteins, except, as I mentioned and explained earlier, the non-fat, pre-digested, unsalted milk proteins such as yogurt and non-fat cottage cheese. Period. For 2 years. How about sushi? No comment. And I'd like to also restate, please, in case you feel that that is not going to give you enough nutrients, I'd like to please restate, that's all I take. A little yogurt and cottage cheese I make myself. I do not eat meat or turkey or chicken or fish or cheese or eggs or any of those things. Or fish, because I don't like fish either.
Did you not think that peas were an acceptable vegetable?
Green, fresh peas.
But they aren't like peas are...
Green, fresh peas, if they spoil, they're okay. Not when they're spoiled, but if they're green and fresh, when they're dried in a legume, they're different completely.
If oatmeal is okay, how about things like corn cereal or other cereals?
Oat bran.
Oat bran.
All right. The question is, if oatmeal is okay, how about oat bran and corn cereal? Corn is a particularly poor grain and is rather low in nutrients, is low in B vitamins, is low in protein, is not very good. What about like corn flakes? Tell you a story about corn flakes. That's not corn cereal. That's processed. And it's treated, and it's heated, and it's crisp, and it's often has sugar in it. Okay, there was accidentally a test made where some researchers wanted to test cornflakes on rats. And they had some rats in one cage, one in another. And they found that some of the rats that were eating cornflakes were doing very poorly. But some of the others managed to get a hold of the cartons that the cornflakes came in. Those were healthier. Corn is a poor cereal, and cornflakes are very bad. All of the so-called breakfast cereals, the ready-to-eat breakfast cereals, are no. Now, okay, I was coming to that. Now, the oat bran is not wise to eat because if it can lump and make bulk, hard to digest and hard to pass bulk in your intestinal tract. When you eat so much vegetables and salads and fruit, you get a lot of fiber. And when you drink the juice, you don't need bran. It is unwise to eat oat bran because it can form a plug in your intestinal tract. Okay? So stay with the natural things, the way they come in nature. It's always best. You had a question. How did the Indians survive? The question is, how did the Indians survive on corn and very little else? First of all, because it was raw and fresh. And it was grown on healthy soil. And it was generally not hybridized. Hybridized is always damaged. And it was a whole different material than what we get today. Okay, you could ask the same. There's certain peoples that survive on a lot of rice. They did better when the rice was natural and whole and on natural soil. Now that when the rice was white and when it started to get polished, they started to get sick, right? Because the peel was what had the B vitamins. The polished rice caused them beriberi and other diseases.
Is it possible to buy real maize such as the Indians used to grow?
Is it possible to buy real maize like they used to grow? Perhaps, but the grains are still dormant foods. They're not the best foods. We covered that. Live foods should be eaten that are green and fresh and active, not dead or dormant. Okay? Were there other questions? Yes?
Is muesli okay to eat?
Is what okay to eat?
It's muesli or something? Yeah. Muesli?
Muesli. Oh, is muesli cereal okay to eat? Muesli cereal can be made up of a whole lot of things. It can be made up of oats and nuts and raisins, and it can be fried and greased and sugared. It can have so many things in it that are absolutely no. If you want to, especially on the Gerson therapy, if you want to do the therapy, and this is what this workshop is about, to do the therapy. It tells you breakfast is oatmeal, a large portion of oatmeal, not muesli. Oats should be organic, and you should eat the oatmeal with fresh fruit or raw fruit or stewed fruit or anything like that, but not prepared with fried maybe and sugared and nuts and other combinations such as muesli. Okay? Stay with the fresh materials and with the simple things, and once they're processed, there's usually, read what's in the ingredients. Muesli usually has nuts in it, and that's already out. Okay? And it may have a lot of other things in it. And even sometimes reading the ingredients is not enough. For instance, I had a friend who was on the therapy. She was doing not very well. And among other things, I saw her one day. She was eating these rice crackers, rice wafers. What are they called? Rice cakes. Rice cakes. And she showed me, no, it's perfectly all right. It's brown rice and water, nothing in it. So I had one. I always try this out. Now, I'm very, very sensitive. I had one. I had instant nausea. There's something wrong with it. Now, you got to remember with the ingredients, when, for instance, a bakery buys ingredients and the flour has been treated, they can put down white flour. They do not know what's in it. They don't know, and they don't have to put down what's been treated and what's in the white flour. Okay? So when somebody who makes these rice cakes buys brown rice and it's been treated, it doesn't have to say so. But if it makes me ill instantly, there's something wrong with it. So I'd like you to avoid any of these packaged, boxed, prepared, and treated foods. And you won't always know how damaging they are. I just happen to be very sensitive because I always eat this clean food. My body tells you when it's wrong. Okay? So I'm very careful with that.
We can eat baked potatoes and oatmeal.
No, ma'am. It's not all you can eat. Did you see what the luncheon included here today?
Yeah.
Okay. The lady says all we can eat is baked potato and oatmeal. That's not what I said.
That's all I ever.
It's wrong to eat that way. You want to eat especially a lot of raw salad. Mixed raw salad is extremely important. Then you want to eat the soup. The soup has a very special reason. The soup Dr. Gerson called the Hippocrates soup. And this particular soup, the particular combination of herbs, and it's exactly described in the book, just what goes in it, this particular combination of herbs is very important to cleanse the kidneys. Now we work a lot on the liver, and we replenish the liver, and we detoxify the liver, and we work very hard because the liver is the essential organ. But the kidney is also a very important organ of detoxifying. And the particular combination of materials, of vegetables and greens and so on, and herbs that go into the soup are particularly important to help to detoxify the kidneys. And it's a mistake to say, well, I live on oatmeal and potatoes. That's no good. Okay? You need the fresh things, the live things, the raw salads, the fresh vegetables, the fresh fruit, the juices, the soup. You need a combination of as much variety as possible, because the variety also represents many different trace minerals. Some minerals are contained in one and less in another. maybe not at all in the third, and it has other important minerals. Okay? So you certainly do not want to limit your diet. Only thing you want to exclude is animal products and all processed foods. It's got to be fresh and live.